Rafi wants to come up here. So I'm just going to announce what the event is. Assalamu alaikum. Thank you everyone for coming tonight. This is going to be, inshallah, more of an open discussion. We'll have about 35 minutes to 40 minutes of lectures and presentation with an introduction by Sheikh Ja'far, and then for you guys to have some discussion and question and answer. Obviously, you guys understand we understand it's an important topic that we all are struggling with and facing. And our kids are struggling with, and it's a difficult time for everyone, especially those that have kids in public school. And we're hoping this to be a first seminar of many to come, and an ongoing, education on health education in general, and communication with parents and kids, inshallah. Without further ado, I'll let Sheikh Ja'far take it from here, inshallah.
جزاك الله خير دكتور صدام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. First of all, we are talking about health. And the first thing that comes to mind to many of us when we speak about the word health, automatically we think of the physical health. Now, alhamdulillah, many people are aware and they are paying attention to the mental health because of many things that are happening, because of the education that people are receiving. So many people are paying attention to the mental health. But let me start with my first point. My first point is many people who are really concerned about the human being, experts who are concerned about the human being of many backgrounds, but particularly of the Muslim background. When we speak about health, we would like to keep in mind 5 components. 5 components. If one of them is not in good shape, the rest will not be in good shape. So the first component is the spiritual health. The spiritual health. And those of you, for a couple decades, maybe 3 decades or so, those of you who were attending the seminars of Sheikh Mukhtar, he used to be talking a lot about the spiritual health. A human being cannot be wholesome without taking in consideration the spiritual health. So that's one. Number 2 is the mental health. A human being cannot be functioning properly if he or she is not in the proper mental state. Therefore, we need to take in consideration what makes a human being be in the proper mental state. Number 3, emotional. The emotional health. A human being does not function as a robot, does not need only food for a physical being. A human being is an emotional being. Therefore, we have to pay attention to what makes this human being emotionally healthy. He or she needs emotions to deal with others in their relationships. We communicate emotions. We live by emotions. Therefore, we need to pay attention to the emotional health. Number 4, the social being, the social part of the human being that needs to be also in proper balance. We need to be socially healthy. If we are not socially healthy, our spiritual part will be affected, our emotional part will be affected, our mental health will be affected, and our physical part will be affected as well. Therefore, the 5th one is the physical part. Is the physical health of the human being need to be in proper balance. If we are not physically in good shape, then all the other 4 will be or may be affected. Therefore, when we talk about health, we are talking about all 5 of them. How that is related to the topic of today? The topic of today is health, but specifically we would like to talk about the sexual health of children and teenagers as they need to be educated properly. As they need to be educated properly from a Muslim perspective. Alhamdulillah, we have doctors today who are going to talk to you about the health part from a doctor's perspective, but I'm just laying the ground, so hopefully all these components will be understood properly. So, as we are talking about this, we are talking about communication. Communication, we need to know what are we communicating, how are we communicating, and why we are communicating what we are communicating. Therefore, as Muslims, we need to understand some background. As parents, since the topic is about our children, as parents, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, يا أيها الذين آمنوا, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told us, قُوا أنفسكم وأهليكم نارا. Protect yourselves and your family from a hellfire. In what way? How are we going to protect our family and our children from a hellfire? That means we have to educate them and protect them from that which leads them to the hellfire. What leads a person to a hellfire? The Prophet ﷺ said, أكثر ما يدخل الناس النار الفم والفرج. After shirk, after associating with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when it gets to behavior, most of what takes people to the hellfire is that which we do with our mouth, our tongue, that means talking, and maybe consuming that which is haram, and also that which we do with our private parts, that is committing zina and other things. So that means this is a very important part, to have sexual education to our children, so hopefully that will prevent them from going to the hellfire. That's one. Number 2, there are so many rules in our deen, in the Quran, in the Sunnah, in the fiqh, that actually teaching boys and girls, teaching teenagers, teaching adults how to behave sexually in preparation for a healthy marriage, in preparation for a healthy relationship. And that healthy relationship in marriage is not only physical, is not only sexual relationship for that pleasure of the lust that people get physically. No, it's much more complicated. It will not be a pleasure without the other components of the pleasure. So therefore, this kind of teaching has to take in consideration all that. When that kind of communication needs to take place? That communication needs to take place very much early. We don't wait until the boy becomes 17 or 18 and the girl becomes 20 years old, and then we start teaching them how to be a good husband and how to be a good wife and how to perform sexual relationship, that is halal. No, it starts way before, because it has that kind of feeling. Children from early age start having curiosity, And the first curiosity as they start paying attention is when they start seeing that actually the boy and the girl are different. They start seeing certain things that actually they didn't know before. Once they start seeing, they start asking questions. How do we answer those questions? One of the questions that those children start asking is say, "Mother, where did I come from?" And many parents, they don't know how to answer that question. How to answer a child who is 2 or 3 years old, "Where did you come from?" All right? Some people will say, "Maybe I bought you from the market. I got you from somewhere." I'm trying to avoid answering the question. But actually that can complicate actually that curiosity of the child. But in the same time, we have traditions, we have culture, we have so many things that may be in complete contradiction with our deen. So how do we deal with that? How did the Prophet ﷺ deal with situations like that? When there were girls and boys, when there were men and women who were asking him very explicit questions. But he was answering them. Aisha radiallahu anha said, "رحم الله نساء الأنصار لم يمنعهن الحياء من أن يتعلمن دينهن أو كما قالت." May Allah give blessing, may Allah give mercy to the women of Ansar. Their haya, their bashfulness did not prevent them from asking direct questions to learn their deen. Why? Because there were incidents where those women of Ansar were asking very specific questions about sexuality, about what they see in the dream that can cause them having a wet dream, or having sexual intercourse, or when a woman having her monthly period, and what should she do, and the Prophet ﷺ was answering those questions. So what does that teach us? It teaches us that we parents, we need to be equipped with proper knowledge. We need to be equipped, and our boundaries is the boundaries of the deen, not our traditions. Because sometimes our tradition, depending where we come from, there are so many taboos. And those kind of taboos can prevent us from communicating with our children the proper way. And if we don't say that information properly to our children, where they are going to get that information? They will get it from a source that maybe you disagree with, from a source that is so open, so vulgar, that you don't want your child to understand it that way. And that source is completely away from something called haya, from something that's called bashful. Because when we teach our children in the Islamic way, we are teaching them what they need to know, however, in a faithful way, based on a proper foundation of faith, on fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, on having proper haya from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having haya from adults, having haya from each other. All that is togetherness. All that kind of sexual education is given to the children according to their age, according to what they are supposed to know. However, in consideration of these proper values that are our Islamic values. But we don't shy away from answering the question. We answer the question the right way, according to what is needed to be said, according to the age of the child, and so on and so forth. The last point that I would like to say is we are not living in a Muslim country where we can count on some sort of an environment that probably the child will be getting some information from the relatives, from the friends that we can count on. No, we are living in an area or in an environment where actually the information that is outside most likely is very dangerous. Most likely is not really in coordination with our own basics of belief. Therefore, we have to be even more alert. In this case, the family has an obligation. Parents need to learn the proper information, the proper way of teaching that information to the children, and the proper setting. As we said, we are a Muslim minority living in a non-Muslim society. That's number one. Number two, we need to learn that the masjid has a role to play. Therefore, communication between the parents and the masjid is very, very important. This is only the first meeting talking about this subject, but as Dr. Saddam said, inshallah, there will be further meetings talking about many, many other issues that are related to this and to other matters that are related to the parents and their children. I believe this is the right way to do things, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for help. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to deliver our obligation. Jazakumullahu khairan wa barakallahu feekum. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Just gonna get, if you don't mind. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين محمد بن عبد الله الصادق الأمين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا. Well, Sheikh Ja'far, Jazakallah khair, covered most of what I was going to say, but we'll do it in a different context. First, to introduce myself, I'm Dr. Saddam Abis. I'm a community member here, been for 8 years, and also a father of 4 kids, aged 17 to 8. So I understand the struggle, and the struggle is real for all of us. And I'm here to learn from you as much as to share with you what I've researched. And I'm not an expert in this subject, but it is within the realm of every parent's, I think, virtue to do this. So I'm going to try to divide it is, first of all, to try to understand why is it so difficult for us to have this conversation and see, and Sheikh Ja'far really highlighted and touched on that well, and then to try to see how can we start having this conversation. I'll share some of my experience of how I started this conversation, and then I will just share with you a little bit of what are some of what we're going to present to your kids, right? That's what everyone is also worried. It's just some of the technical stuff. I think it's the easiest part of that. So as Sheikh Ja'far said, scholars look at this. The reason, and some scholars in this field had said, the reason why Muslim parents have difficulty to discussing this topic is because of haya. And we have a really misunderstanding of haya. So haya, from an Islamic perspective, is a positive. Modesty is a positive effect that have on a child, teaching them to be modest in their appearance, modesty in their behavior, to be modest in the actions, in performing or taking any actions that are sinful. But then the cultural part, which is the negative haya, it's parents shying away from knowledge, right? Shying away from teaching their kids about menstruation, sexual health, relationship, or even the children the other way. Once we internalize this level of haya, that becomes, there is no openness between the parents and the kids. So the kids are shy to ask their parents about certain topics. They're shy to ask their parents, particularly about sexual health, sexual desires, sexual relationships they have. And then you take it to another level, then our teachers, right? These are topics, very rarely do you see them in the curriculum of Islamic schools. But as Sheikh Ja'far said, and this is the hadith that Sheikh Ja'far mentioned, there is no shame in seeking knowledge, right? Our mother Aisha radiallahu anha narrated about the women of the Ansar, how excellent they were. They don't allow shyness to prevent them from seeking knowledge at all. So there is really, seeking knowledge and being ashamed of knowledge has no basis in our deen. It's interesting, if you even look into the Quran is very explicit. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created a human being and really was not shy in describing how he created a human being. If you say in multiple ayahs, and I'll just share a few, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when He talks about the creation, how a human being is created, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِن نُطْفَةٍ أَمْشَاجٍ نَبْتَلِيهُ فَجَعَلْنَاهُ سَمِيعًا بَصِيرًا. We've created a man from a sperm drop mixture that we may try him, and we made him seeing and hearing and seeing. And then he goes to really even describe this in Surah At-Tariq in a little bit more explicit terms. And the reason why I'm sharing this is because if we start from the foundation of Quran and use the Quran as our foundation of how we discuss these issues with our kids, especially obviously age appropriate, then it can make the conversation easier because it's even scientific for that. If you just sit with your kids and say, let's see what this ayah means, you have a teenage kid, then that can open the conversation, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah At-Tariq, خُلِقَ مِن مَاءٍ دَافِقٍ يَخْرُجُ مِن بَيْنِ الصُّلْبِ وَالتَّرَائِبِ. I think that's as explicit as you can, and this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's created from a gushing fluid that's issued from between the loins and the ribs. And then you take this, once you've set this foundation, if we are comfortable with this and we are knowledgeable, we set this foundation, then when our kids are a little bit older, we really discuss what is marriage, what's the purpose of marriage, and not the perverted purpose that's being popularized in the media and now. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ إِنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا لِتَسْكُنُوا إِلَيْهَا وَجَعَلَ بَيْنَكُم مَّوَدَّةً وَرَحْمَةً. He has created wives from you, from among yourself, that you might find peace in them, and has put love and tenderness between you. So even, and this comes to the point, some parents say, I come from a very conservative culture, as husband and wife, can you show affection in front of your kids? Actually is encouraged. Experts in the field, affection in a way that is halal, that your kids see how you treat each other. That's what they learn. They see how you're very kind to your wife. You sit with your wife watching TV. You do these things, or sitting, you're laying in the lap of your wife, or the kids take this and they understand what is true love, it is okay in our culture because they are having these feelings. And I'll get into some of the physiology, why we have to understand that they do get some sexual feelings. So I hope in this part that I have said, conveyed to you that it is within our realm and within our religion to talk to our kids and to really be explicit about talking to them in a way, in a scientific manner, also in a religious manner, and it doesn't go against our religion to do sexual education and health. It is actually a big core, and as Sheikh Ja'far mentioned, and Sheikh Yasin will try to do this in the seminar with the kids, there is one scholar said over 2,000 nas of fiqh that is just related to sexual health and tahara, and also our religion is a complete religion that encompasses all this, and this is a very important topic. And if that was not enough, so why is it important to have this difficult conversation, right? People say, I never had this done, my parents never talked to me. They're gonna learn it from, they're gonna grow up and Fatra will teach them or whatever. But I don't think that, the time we're living in is so different. If you look at our society is becoming increasingly sexualized. If any of you guys have looked at video games, social media, the mall, there are sexual hints everywhere you go. Even in the most benign games, the most benign, let alone in school. Now, the biggest thing we have is kids as young as, kindergarten and first grade, there are sexual contents being, probably not as explicit, but are being taught to them. In North America, 9 out of 10 kids, teenage kids, have visualized sexual content on the web. And our kids are not immune. I'll show you that. There is statistics to show there is a council and a mental health organization called nasiha.org out of Canada. 100% of calls to them from Muslim boys are about masturbation and pornography. So I think it's really time for us to wake up and really, it's a struggle. it is a struggle that teenagers are going through. It's a struggle that teenagers are facing, and we have to really acknowledge it. The first step is to acknowledge it and learn how to discuss this with kids. There was a study, and I won't bore you with a lot of the details, but there's a study that looked at, out of Wayne State in Michigan, looked at the prevalence of risky behavior among US Muslim college students. And this infographic really highlights, that, I don't know how well you see it, but they showed that about 48% of Muslim girls, college-age Muslim girls, have engaged in premarital sex. And actually, sex is a spectrum, right? And 57% of boys. Illicit drugs in the teens, alcohol, tobacco, gambling. When they took a combination of all of these and asked kids anonymously, college students, have you engaged in any of these activities? 77% of the kids of the college students have tried one of these activities. So, and this is directed towards Muslim college students alone. So I think it is a prevalent problem that we really have to address. Now, this is more to the general public from the Brookings Institute, looking at it does not matter what your socioeconomic status is either. Kids, and this is just looking at stealing, marijuana, and drugs, kids from across low income, middle income, or high income, all are at some point in their time are involved in that if they're not in the right environment. So in the popular culture, in the Western culture, we justify this as the improper justification. I call it the improper justification for young adult risky behavior. So we say kids engage in this risky behavior because there is hormonal. This is what, if you look at the literature, they say there is increased hormone, increased testosterone for boys, etc. I want them to take risk, etc. And then psychological, right? The desire to fit in. I'm going to try to present to you a different perspective that we'll get to that how, from an Islamic perspective, how do we look at puberty and adulthood? But before we do that, how do we start the conversation? I think this is the most difficult, especially if there hasn't been an established communication channel between the parents and the kids. The one approach that I found that was very interesting is this, as Sheikh Ja'far alluded to, is holistic and integrated approach to the conversation. And you can see what fits for you in that, but you start, for me it's easy to start with the scientific, and then we pull up the other ones, right? If you take any subject, you take the subject of, a 5-year-old asks you why moms has big breasts and dad doesn't, or why you have facial hair and mom doesn't have facial hair. And then you start with the scientific part of it, hormonal, etc. Then you talk about, from a religious standpoint, laysa dhakaru kal untha, and bring that. And then the fitra, you can use animals, right? You have a lion is different than a cheetah, right? They both have a cow and a bull for a breast. And then societal norm. You integrate that, the kids understand it. I think one of the major issues that we're dealing with in schools is when you talk about LGBTQT, right? If you use this framework of looking at the situation from multiple angles, because if you just do it from a religious perspective alone, the kids will say, oh, my parents are, just old school religious, etc. If you look at it from multiple angles, you're more likely to connect with the child and be able to have the child be convinced of that. And I would recommend that you start with whatever you feel is that you're good at and that you can connect with your kid, but then bring the others into that topic as well. So I wanted to stop back and let's talk puberty. And this is what, when kids here in the United States and the West, we look at it is we have child, adolescent, and adult. In Islam, we only have child and adult, right? Puberty is a time of accountability, is the time of you to enter to adulthood. And it should be an exciting time for kids, right? This is a time where you are accountable for your action and you have responsibilities. it's not the time where you are excused for doing things that that are not part of the norm. And again, the Islamic definition, this is what we're going to share with some of the kids, is that when a child has a wet dream, or they started to grow in hairs in their private areas, and the age varies. I think the technicalities for this group are not as important. But I think sharing this with them, how do we look at puberty from an Islamic perspective? Puberty should be the time of strength, right? This is the time for kids and for males and females to really figure out, really, this is where after you become an adult and you can become older, things start going downhill, as we say it here. But the time of youth is when you can accomplish a lot and set the foundation for your future. So as you said, as we know from the hadith of where Abdullah ibn Umar say, "O Messenger of Allah, let me enjoy my strength and youth." And the hadith of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he said, seven persons whom Allah will give shade of His throne under the day when there would be no shade except that of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a just ruler, and a youth who grow up worshiping Allah. So if we redirect our kids that puberty is not the time to start have raging hormones and that type of mind frame, rather it is a time of me to build my connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and build my roots in my deen. And I found this helpful when I started this ayah from Surah Ghafir. It really goes through the whole transition, and it makes it easy. If you have a teenage kid that you think has hit, or male or female that had hit puberty, if you just bring up this ayah and say, let's read it together. And in this, for you that don't know the ayah, it says, I'm going to read in English for the interest of time. It is who created you from dust, then from a sperm, then from a clinging clot, then brings you out as a child, then He develops you to reach maturity, right? There is no adolescent from child to maturity. So you can talk about how the development from the fetus until becoming a child and then mature, and then you become elder, and then the ayah continues. And I always show this is fun. This is where we're going through the transformation from a boy to being a man, and focus on that and allow the kids to understand that you're growing. Puberty is when you're going in to become a man. Now, just for the interest of time, I'm going to talk about a little bit of the technical stuff. Really, if you're dependent on what the child is and how much the parent has knowledge, the reason why kids started changing is that what happens is you have hormones released from your brain, from a gland in your brain called the hypothalamus into the pituitary gland, and then you release sex hormones. And these sex hormones are done, activate your sex organs, ovaries for females and testes for boys, and they lead to the ultimate release of estrogen and testosterone. And those hormones lead to these secondary characteristics, right? What is, Dr. Wafi is going to talk about the female aspect, but what does the effect of testosterone on a child? It increased their bone density. That's what the child started growing. It does, from their brain, it increases their sex drive, improves their mood. It does mood. While they're growing, their mood changes. So you have to have a little bit of understanding why they're going through this mood changes that they're going through. But a lot of it is positive, right? Their muscle increase, their skin, they have hair growth in their skin become oily. That's why they get pimples, and kids really like that. And then there are the secondary characteristics, sexual characteristics for boys. They started growing hair in their private areas, their testicles started growing. And these are, I think, important conversations to have with your kids as they're seeing these changes in their bodies. Again, this is more knowledge. I wanted to spend a little bit of time here to talk about the physiology of sex attraction, right? Sex attraction is real, is natural, and we should acknowledge it, because attraction to the opposite sex has a physiologic basis. You know, the alternative, we know what the alternative is. If we prevent that, we gotta acknowledge it. It's real. We understand you having these feelings. It's normal. It is, and it's a tough conversation to have, right? When your kid comes in, we know the famous story from one of the young Sahabas come to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and tell him, "Idhan li bizina," right? Can you allow me to make zina, or give me permission to make zina? Did Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam start to tell him, "This is haram, this is haram, this is haram"? That's not how he addressed it. The way he addressed it is said, "Would you like that for your mom? Were you like that for your sister?" To get them to understand, right? He acknowledged that I understand this sexual drive is real, but this is the next step is how do you handle it, right? How do you, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell us, you know, fear not to come on near lawful sex. So steps to stay away from it, you know, talk to your kids. Here are these things, you know, lower gaze, fast, choose good company, make yourself busy with dhikr of Allah, make dua. And for those that are not, I think as parents, we have to be prepared to allow our kids to marry. I don't know, here I am, I'm, you know, physician, let's put career aside. I actually get a lot of friends, I say, when do you recommend I get married? Should I finish medical school? I said, no, don't finish medical school. Get married so that your wife can help you get through medical school, right? A lot of kids that are, I personally recommend, once you're 20, 23 years old, get married and not wait to finish medical school. Your career will stay there. Your livelihood and your religion and might go away without. With that said, I'm hoping that if us as parents, we have these conversations, this will lay the foundation for other topics, right? Discussion with child's, their maharims. This is for younger. Pornography, masturbation, we talked about that. Premarital relationship, marriage relationship, drugs, vaping, violence. There's a lot of issues that our kids are exposed to. And once we have a foundation of communication with them, I think we will be able to tackle these issues without any problem. And we will share this, there are some great resources out there for anyone that's interested to help with these topics. With that said, I'll let Dr. Wafia do her talk, and then inshallah we'll have some.
Assalamu alaikum. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. So I've been working as a primary care physician in this area for 12 years, and I started teaching youth at not an official level but at a casual level since 2013, 14, something like that. That was around when my own children, they were around age 12, 13. When I started doing that, I could not find any syllabus, any curriculum which would meet my need. And when I was asked for a certain masjid, this is back in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, I could not find any syllabus saying, okay, this is A to Z, covering everything, justifying what we need to teach our children. So kind of finding material here and there. For the first time ever, I recently just come across a material which kind of looking at our state syllabus, something matching with covering everything, but understanding fiqh of Islam also at the same time. So this is very exciting for the first time having a syllabus and having someone who can guide us step by step. So understanding the health part perspective, but also understanding the deen part, like how Sheikh Jafar mentioned, understanding health as a whole, physical health, emotional health, spiritual health, understanding communication level, social level health, and how do you incorporate everything in one syllabus and going, taking the child from anywhere from age maybe 6, 7, 8, all the way up into 17, 18, and inshallah, continuing afterwards in different levels. So when I was coming across regarding what we need to teach in, to start with as a first session, we came across, okay, let's start with, because we're talking about as a physician level health, starting with puberty-related health, starting with condition that you see in childhood, what they're dealing with in the school, what they're dealing with from day-to-day life, but not able to discuss with other peers or parents, or not having support. Putting yourself in a child's shoes and understanding, for example, as early as age 4 or 5, when they're in public school, I'm not talking about Islamic school, in public school, and understanding statistics are very scary. That's why it's important to understand how important it is to start as early as possible. Now we know as a Muslim, Islam teaches us, for example, when we have to start worshiping Salah, and we start teaching our kids as early as age 7, even though it's not for another 2-3 years. By age 10, we are starting teaching them, okay, separate bedding, separate, for example, haya, how you dress, how you enter parents' room. As early as age 10, even though desires and emotional changes and sexual changes, they're not there yet. So Islam teaches us how to get started 2-3 years ahead of time. So if haya kind of comes in the way of communication, we're not justifying what we need in a society which is so hypersexual. So we think our kids are so innocent that let's wait, and eventually they will learn gradually on their own or through school. By that time, a lot of damage has happened. So being a primary care myself, I believe in preventive approach. So when we start something way earlier, before they're exposed to something that it is very difficult to undo, at that time it's kind of already late. So starting from looking at our state level, I'm not only talking about New York State syllabus, going through different laws, their curriculum, what is mandatory to be teaching a young child as early as elementary level, then intermediate level, and then the high school level. They start at as early as age kindergarten, 6, 7, 8. So starting with the physical changes, how men, women are different. Puberty-related health, which we are discussing right now, middle school has already gone through that. So they're age 7th, 8th, they've already gone through it. So we will be introducing that this year, concept of, okay, how do we introduce fiqh part into it? But most of these kids are they already know quite a few of this material, but in a different way what we're trying to do. By the time, for example, any child who's age 5 or 6 in a public school, just fitting in, just trying to kind of go through from day-to-day life and trying to fit in, according to statistics, 1 out of every 3 children, they do not feel comfortable showing their identity, depending on, of course, wherever you are, and they try to hide their Muslim identity. And as 1 out of every 6 children, they try to pretend they're not a Muslim. So Muslim identity in a way, because how they're being looked at, how they're being discriminated in school level. So if it is so difficult for them, and think of this is our coping mechanism. This is something, as a human being, we have a survival skills, and children have to go through that as early as 5 and 6. Being a parent, if we start having these type of conversations so early as age 6, 7, 8, it will help them prepare to the level when they're around middle school, high school, when they have to deal with real stuff, they will be prepared for it. So other than that, intermediate and high school level, when they're teaching sexual education, by the time when the children are in middle school and high school, in New York State, according to the curriculum, it is mandatory to teach them STD prevention, if they are dealing with any concerns, how do they get help? Right now, some states, overall in the United States, there are only 7 states who has made sexual education curriculum as a comprehensive curriculum, which means that part of LGBTQ education, homosexuality, how to normalize things, they are not as, right now we're dealing with legislation that these bills may be passed, and our children will be going through this type of education as early as age 5. When you see that, when kids are going through age 5, 6, 7, thinking homosexuality is common, and when they go through that type of education, it changes our fitrah. And once that has been manipulated, it is very, very, very difficult to undo that damage. So out of the statistics that we have just recently seen through CICW, almost 50 to 60%, 60% of American children and 54 of Islamic children, Islamic Muslim youth, they accept homosexuality, and they accept it in a way that they do not see any harm. If they're not dealing with, for example, if they're not involved in those type of acts, they do not see a harm in accepting that type of education. So what is the problem with that? By the time when, for example, when you're dealing with that type of education, you're accepting it, acceptance is the first phase when you're dealing with any type of sin. Acceptance is the first step to it, toward the concerns where someone will be dealing with something more complicated and something more severe. So that was as far as New York State that I wanted to discuss with you. Now, regarding girls' education, Brother Saddam mentioned a lot of education that I will be going through the same hormonal changes, physical changes, emotional changes, understanding the fiqh of menstrual cycle, and understanding, for example, when they're going through all these different types of desires, different emotional changes, little bit of brainstorming, what are the different things that they can do, and what is their understanding, and then also presenting according to Quran and Sunnah, what are the other things that they can do which will help. When we open these type of doors of conversation, I will tell you, as early as, for example, 8th grader, 7th grader, when they are given that environment that they can ask any type of questions, it is amazing to see how much they are keeping to themselves, but there's nobody to answer. So just from last year, when I was teaching our younger kids, Masjid As-Salam, not younger, I would say middle-aged high school, and discussing, okay, addiction, emotional health, and how they came up with differences between their parents, but these are mostly refugees' kids. How their parents and their communication between them and parents, it's just completely, there's no connection. And when there is no connection, how do you, in public school, there is nobody to go to. How do you have those type of questions answered? So it is very innocent from them. For example, when you talk about addiction and why vaping and something simple as you can think of, it may look like so innocent, and to start with, how it can take you to next level of addiction. And they started opening up, saying, okay, I have done that. Does that mean I'm haram? Does that mean that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like me anymore? Does that mean I'm considered to be sinful? I mean, it's very disturbing also that kids do not have anybody to go to ask these type of questions. So inshallah, depending on what questions do you have, we'll go forward with discussing the next few sessions, what are the different things we can discuss in emotional health, and after that addiction health, and in what level of LGBTQ related conversation we can discuss in more detail, and what type of mental health resources do we have available to kids, high school and middle school level. Jazakumullah khairan.
Inshallah, Jazakumullah khair, Sister Wafia. Wafia, yes, and Dr. Saddam, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. Inshallah ta'ala, we would like to open the floor for Q&A, because a lot of knowledge, as Brother Saddam said in the beginning, is going to be in the open session. When you ask questions, inshallah ta'ala, and try to address these questions. But I would like to tell you that the next couple of days, Saturday and Sunday, there will be sessions for the youth. I would like to share with you a story. I forgot who shared with me this story, Sister Aya or Brother Saddam or Duan, but one of the youth sent a message. This is a lesson we'd like to learn. Send a message to one of the youth leaders and showed me the message. The message was one of the youth telling Brother Duan or Sister Aya that I don't feel comfortable, you as a masjid, telling our parents this information, because once you tell them, they will come home and start talking to us about these things, and we don't feel comfortable talking to our parents about these issues. Look at the mind of these youth. Not only the parents feel shy to talk to their children about these issues, now the youth feel the same way. They don't feel comfortable their parents opening this discussion with them. And this boy is sending the message that please don't do it. Please don't do it. The reason why I'm saying this is this is something we have to really, alhamdulillah, for those of you who have older children, there is something you can do. But for those of you who have young children, don't make the same mistake. Don't make this mistake. So start talking to this issue. Open up to your children as soon as you can. This is the first thing I would like to share with you. The second thing is, inshallah ta'ala, in these 2 days, we'd like to cover what was shared today in a manner that is appropriate to their age. And also we'd like to talk to them about some fiqhi aspects related to this topic, right? And we would like to be, as Brother Saddam said, we'd like to be open with the youth, because they know beyond what you can imagine. I did this course a couple years ago, I think 2 years ago, right? 2020. I did this course 2020, and it was closed session, not live stream. And they was shocked. I am not that old, by the way. There are some people here that are so old. So I am still very young, relatively. And they were shocked of some questions that I never thought of it. And I never thought does exist. For example, I was giving you example. I was talking about intimacy, the halal and haram intimacy. Even among the couple themselves, among the husband and wife. And I was talking about certain positions, what's halal, what's haram, and it was for 16 and up. So some of the questions from 16 and 17 years old, I was shocked of the depth and the explicit of some questions. I never thought that somebody even asked this question, right? But this is our children who know this, so they know beyond that. So some parents who are so concerned about what we are discussing with the youth, trust us. We would like to discuss with them everything, right? Because they need to know it. Of course, I told the Brother Saddam, Sister Wafia, and the team were preparing the material, 10, 11, 12 years old. Of course, there is certain knowledge should be there. But 14 and up, wallahi, they know everything. So then we have to repackage this knowledge. We have to introduce it in a clean, pure manner. Because what they know already is so much beyond what they are supposed to know, right? So now we have to repackage it, clean it, purify it, and approach it in a manner that is more fitri, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted us to know. The last thing I would like to share, and then inshallah we open the floor, is we have to understand also we are trying to address an issue, but this issue is as a result of a particular society. Brother Saddam, when he mentioned the approach, he mentioned the fitri, religious and scientific, and then he mentioned societal. I respectfully, Brother Saddam, in our society this is a problematic, because societal approach is destruction in our society particularly, because how to approach sexuality in our society is broken. Wherever you come, it's broken. All the norms are broken. All the norms are violated, right? What the definition of man? Have you seen documentary What is a Woman? Have you seen it? I recommend you go YouTube it, Google it. Every time I think they remove it from YouTube. They don't like it. What is a woman? Now even doctors are changing the definition of what is a woman, right? No, woman is if you feel like a woman, you are a woman. Is the woman who can be pregnant? No, even transgender can be pregnant. So they are changing all the norms. Even science is manipulated right now. So what I want to say is, we live not in ideal society, not in ideal time. So part of the issue is the society itself, is the norms themselves. So this is why I know I might be extreme in what I'm going to say. And I know some of you think I'm crazy, right? But I feel responsible in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to say it. Wallahi, wallahi, wallahi. Think twice if you would like to keep your son in public school. Think twice. I know you think, oh, you don't know what we are going through. I know very well, believe me. But I am very positive, certain, with the way things are going. She was talking about what a bill is being discussed in New York State, and it has been approved in 7 states already. It's going to be introduced as early as 5 years old. Would you like your son to be there? So think twice. Now, what is the alternatives? This is what we need to discuss. What are the alternatives? Right? Islamic schools, yes, but cannot fulfill all these needs. There are alternatives. There is a homeschooling, there is a group system. Now there are few of you who said, but the mothers and the fathers both work. Can we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 families, 10 families, and we hire a teacher for our children? And they socialize together, and they plan trips together, and be creative, save your son. But putting them in that environment, and then try to undo the damage, yes, we are trying to, Sister Wafia said, prevention better than the treatment. This is part of the I hope, but I'm not so optimistic, believe me. So I know this is a different discussion, but think twice if you would like to keep your son in public school. Think twice. This is why it's part of the issue, it's part of the problem. Inshallah ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect our children. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve their deen, their identity. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve their fitrah. Now we are not discussing the deen. Now we are, okay, the deen, even the deen we can be patient. Now the fitrah, just be man and be woman, okay? Be man and be woman. Even this, it is at risk, right? We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guidance and protection. Ya Rabbil Alameen, Ya Rahman Rahimin. In that context, I would like to comment on something Brother Saddam said it. You know that man who came to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and he said, Ya Rasulullah, إِذَنْ لِي بِالزِّنَا, give me permission to do fornication. You know what the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam answered? Of course, he was not vicious, violent, he was patient, nice, kind with him. But you know what did Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam use? Which methodology Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used? He used al-fitrah. He said, do you like it for your mother? Oof, no! Do you like it for your sister? No! I will tell you a story. There is a sheikh in Houston. He said, I tried it once with a boy. He said, what's wrong with this? You see, when the fitrah is corrupted, then you know the depth of the damage? He said, I tried. He said, I thought, let me follow the prophetic methodology. So a man was discussing with al-haram. He said, but do you like it for your sister? Yeah, what's wrong with it? Let her do whatever she wants. So this is what I'm trying to say. The fitrah now at risk. So Nabi Sallam used the last resort, which is al-fitrah. Something natural. Natural is disgusting. A man doesn't like his sister to be somebody to do something like this to her mother, to his mother, to his sister, to his. But our children today, their fitrah is not that preserved. Ya Allah protect us. Ya Allah protect us. Inshallah, let's open the floor for questions. Tfaddal. No questions? Allahu Akbar. Yes, go ahead.
So as I said, I think communication, as Sheikh Ja'far had mentioned before, is a process, that starts in multiple levels, right? If the parents have an open communication with their kids about other subjects, and then it's easy, right? If communication just about this subject in particular, personally, I think it's easier from whatever perspective you feel strong for. I think Sheikh Yasin mentioned, talk about it from a fitrah standpoint. I think if we resort back, if you are trying to talk to your kids about even the whole issue of LGBTQ issue, I think if you put it into that framework, right, the framework of how is it violating fitrah, right? It is man. If you look at animals, right, even to a child, when you look at an animal, there is a male and a female animal, right? Together, that's how you create. You look at it from a scientific standpoint, this is really, when you're talking about what is the purpose of having a union between a female and a male, is to procreate and create and propagate society. Scientifically, that can't happen with this. And then also societal, right? From a society standpoint, yes, Sheikh Yasin said the norms that their norms have been distorted, right? The norms have been distorted, that this is what it's normal to have these types of relations. But if you're come at it from a perspective, how are we going to propagate humanity. At some point, if we continue this, there isn't going to be the propagation of humanity. And then I think, from as religious, you talk about, Qawm Lut, and there's a lot of other things that you can use. So I think it depends on what the topic you're trying to communicate with the kids. I felt that tool, is a tool of communication, where you start with something until you get their attention, and then you bring in the other aspects. Wallahu a'lam.
I just would like to add something. I think this is something I learned, particularly in our community, talking to so many, particularly fathers, about this issue. They come to me how we address this issue. I think definitely if your children are so young, or you are about to have children, or you have children 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, the best methodology is to have an open communication, healthy communication, and that facilitate everything else. But if you already have older children, teenagers, where you did not establish good communication, I think there is still something can be done. You can still learn certain things, break that barriers. But one other ways, until this has happened, one other ways I learned that some people did it, and I think it's not so bad, I'm sure these tips, is having friends that they trust talk to their children about these issues. For example, I talk to your child about this issue and you talk to my child about this issue. I know it's not ideal, but having somebody you trust, especially if you travel together, he's close friend to you, they come to your house, you go to their house, so it's a close friend and close to your son as well. This is one way, having somebody you trust, whether in the masjid or a friend or family member or an uncle, an uncle of the son, not an uncle, an old man, right? Somebody that close to your son and somebody you trust, the language that they use, the approach that they use, the guidance that they give, and have them talk to your children. Again, that's not the best way, but better than not doing anything. Some people, they say, I can't talk about it. The word cannot come. It's embarrassing. It's awkward. This is something you can do to have them be educated about this, but not in the wrong way, inshallah. But definitely the best way is to have healthy communication from very, very early age. From the very young age, demonstrate these facts in a simple way. Even when your son is 3, 4 years old, like men are not like women. And my son always asked me about some, I thought stupid questions, but wallahi, this how it shaped their mind. He asked me why I don't wear what his mother wears. Like, why don't you put khimar like my mother does? Like, why some questions. And if you take advantage of these questions, this is how you can demonstrate your mother is a female, and this is what's supposed to be, and a male, and this is what's supposed to be, and this is what they can do, this is what we can do. Allah created us different. So don't dismiss these questions, because these questions that shape later on the way they think, the way they view things, the way what's right and what's wrong, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. So some ladies don't want to ask out loud, so you can text this number and you can, like, Brother Saddam will receive the messages and he will reply back, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum. You spoke about going to private school and sending your kids to private school, but the reality of the situation is kids and adults have to interact with these communities, regardless LGBTQ, any kids who are involved in early sexuality. They have to communicate with them at some point in their life. At what age do you believe it's the right age to teach them to interact with these communities respectfully and in a community way, to be able to live amongst them? And what age is that? And what's the teachings of that?
Jazakallah khair. This is a smart question. Of course, when we said we protect our children from the public school, what's happening in public school, we are not saying we put them in a bubble, isolated from the society. We are preserving them and we are teaching them our values. And in teaching them our values, of our values is tolerance. Of our values is respect. Of our values is there are people different, do different things, believe different things, and we teach them how to deal with them, how to respect them, but you are different. Unlike when you put your child in that environment when he is brainwashed or she's brainwashed. And now statistics shows 6, I don't know what the number is, 6. 1 out of 6 of our children, Muslims, I think not only children, even adults now, are okay with homosexuality and with gay and so on and so forth. Why? Because this is what we call it normalization. Right? كثرة المساس تذهب الإحساس. If you see something day and night, and every time it's normal, it's normal, it's normal, you don't feel so bad about it anymore. So, of course, we teach our children in the proper age, right? When they, inshallah ta'ala, when they reach maybe 10, 11, we teach them that this is these people and this is what they believe and this why, and we feel bad for them, but we are different, and this is wrong, right? And so many others, like we teach children that we are Muslims, they are Christians, they are Jews, they are people who are atheists. Similarly, we teach them about other communities in the society. And this idea of, no, we have to be part of the society, this is, with all due respect, we don't understand how the dynamics of the society, the impact of the children that the public school curriculum have on our children. Even there is something called unspoken curriculum. Like, it doesn't have to be a book. It doesn't have to be a lecture. It doesn't have to be homework. It doesn't have to be storytelling. There is something unspoken curriculum. It's the environment. It's the culture. Right? This is more powerful than any lecture, any book, any teacher, anything. This is what we are talking about. And that is so deep in the mind of the children growing up in the public school. So this is what I'm saying. We need to teach them about these groups and how to deal with them and how to respect them at college, at work, as neighbors, as human beings, that they deserve respect. Yet this is something wrong, and we are not like this. Wallahu a'lam.
Combining the two questions together, how to have a communication and at what level do you start? So meaning, as early as a child can start speaking, you can start teaching how do you respect people around you. That respecting someone does not mean you are following their values. Meaning you keep your identity, but how you kind of be in the same community. Because kids ask these questions, if I have someone in my class who is a gay or lesbian or something, how do I behave around them? Can I have them as a friend? What can I share with them? So deep questions, right? So if you start having the conversation around 13, 14, 15, it's already kind of too late, right? So sometimes women, we like to talk, right? We can start going on and having any conversation. And generally speaking, fathers don't want to have that conversation. But it's a skill that anybody can learn. And it's not something that takes a lot of effort. Sometimes all it takes is listening. All you have to do is nod and then be receptive, and you will start looking at you, and then we'll start talking as early as 7 and 8. By the time when you start 12 and 13, they're already quiet. They don't want to share anything. But if you have started following that skill as early as young age, we don't want to listen because they talk too much. By the time when we want to hear, then they stop talking, right? So if we are at the receptive end, it continues. But if we are not at the receptive ends, regarding these topics, as early, if they're going to public school, as early as kindergarten. So one of the things that we were discussing is, if these narratives are being taught as early as age 5, 6, 7, then why don't we discuss our discussions before that age, before it gets corrupted?
No, I think if there's a couple of other questions, maybe this one Sheikh Yassin can address. One question came from one of the sisters is, what would be the set for the youth sessions over the weekend for each group? And what's the intended goal to be achieved for the kids to walk out? And what can the parents do to prepare? You want to start, Sheikh? And then
So I think what is intended to be discussed is, that was the first part of the question? Yeah, of course, it's going to be girls and boys different. Inshallah ta'ala, Sister Wafia and Sister Aya will be teaching the girls, and me and Brother Saddam will be teaching the boys. Tomorrow, inshallah ta'ala, will be age 14 to 17. Boys by themselves, girls by themselves, and Sunday there will be from 10 to 13, also boys by themselves and girls by themselves. This is separate gender. Now the topic or the goal is we would like to fulfill their curiosity in the halal way. They have a lot of questions anyway. So this curiosity is not something wrong to begin with. So what we would like to set some principles and have an open discussion like we are having right now. And you believe the number of questions that you will be asking, that would lead the conversation, right? So we have something in mind, what we would like to achieve. We would like them to achieve a proper understanding of their body and the changes in their body and the implication of that in their ibadat, in their tahara, purification, what comes out of the human body, the difference between these fluids that comes out of the human body and that requires wudu and that requires ghusl, the puberty, the signs of puberty, what does puberty mean, the sunan al-fitra, the bodily hair, what to do with it, and so on and so forth. We talk about murahaqa, the adolescence and how to deal with it. We'll talk about intimacy. For younger boys, we are not going to talk much about intimacy, but older kids will talk about intimacy, the halal and the haram intimacy. We'll talk about pornography. We'll talk about premarital relationships, and we'll talk about the marriage and so on. For younger kids, we'll talk about how the kids is born. We don't come from the sky like rain. There is something happen. Even for younger kids, they need to learn, right? And they need to ask these questions, and we need to answer them. Basically, what we did, we went over the public school curriculum, and we are Islamizing the public school curriculum. That's if you like, in one word. We studied the public school curriculum in health and sex education, and we are countering this with Islamic approach, right? So as a matter of fact, certain topics, we found it covered in public school very young. We are embarrassed to teach it, but it's already there. They already learned it, right? So we have to deal with it. We have to teach it, inshallah ta'ala. But we'd like it also to be we would like the kids to feel comfortable, and there will be, inshallah ta'ala, a way they can ask their questions. They don't even have to say it. They can text like this, inshallah ta'ala. Would like to add anything?
Jazakallah khair, Shaykh. I'm just going to go through the other questions. Maybe Sister Rafia can do this one. He says, how a mother can be open with her son if the father is not involved, especially the son starting to ask questions about relationships between men and women. The age is 9, reads a lot, he's advanced. Is it early? And their relationship is very open since sometimes they have asked big questions. I think it's not early, and I think the mom needs to step up the plate, but I'll let the sister.
So I don't know about the age the question was referring to. 9, you said? Okay. So I have a son, and like I said, we like to talk being a physician. I started these type of conversation with my own son as early as like 7, 8-year-old, and he was comfortable, and I went in depth. Like I said, that age, it's easier to discuss things as early as like 9, 10, 11. As they're closer to age 12, 13, 14, just by nature, and they're not as open. I mean, they can still ask the question, but it's easier, I think, when they're going through the puberty-related changes, and you can see, okay, voice changing, they have other concerns, they have questions. They're very receptive at that point. So 9 is actually perfect age.
There are some certain knowledge and certain information that you have to teach it. For example, even parents, sometimes, unfortunately, this is an issue that, inshallah ta'ala, I would like to address it within these sessions. This is the first session. Maybe you can plan another one in 2 weeks to address the remaining topics. Is some fiqhi things. Like, now when we talk about puberty for girls is different from puberty for boys. But puberty happens with certain things, certain sciences. Like for women is the monthly cycle, for the man or for the boys is wet dream or something like this. Now, the fluids that comes out of the body, have you taught your son to differentiate between these and these and these? There are a number of fluids comes out of your body. So if you yourself are not educated on these topics, how would you like to teach it to your son? All right? So there is a knowledge that has to be learned, some of it biological, some of it fiqhi, some of it communication-wise, and that we are trying to bring awareness. Inshallah ta'ala, if you are interested, in 2 weeks we can have another session when we can cover the fiqhi aspect of this, right? I'm going to teach it anyway for the kids tomorrow and after tomorrow, but if you parents are interested, we can go over these, the science of puberty for men and women, and how to differentiate between certain things, and how to deal, their implication in salat, their implication in tahara, their implication. One they did that session, a boy told me, it was an anonymous question, but I knew it was a boy from the question. He said, you said in your presentation that boys reach the age of puberty by one of these sciences, and one of the, either by wet dream or reaching the age of 15 or this or that. He said, I remember I had the first wet dream when I was 12, but I start praying at 16. What do I do with this salat? He didn't know that this is actually, technically, you are adults when you are 12. So this is some of the questions that we need to learn, right? So the moment you see one of these signs, now you are a man, you are adults. And one issue, Brother Saddam Jazakallah Khair spoke about it, and I find it ridiculous with the way modernity is presenting adolescence, is the concept of adolescence, al-murahaqa, right? Now, the way we treat people who are in this group, in that stage, adolescence age, teenagers, as if they are in so diligent, sensitive stage in their life now. Nobody can talk to them, nobody can tell them what to do, no, don't mess up with them, they are going through. If you treat them as such, then they behave as such. They behave the way you consider them. If you consider them now men and women and adults and responsible, they behave responsible. Just tell me if anybody has any background in history. Have you ever heard about adolescence before modernity? It did not exist, not only in Islam. It never existed. There is people at 13 and 14 and 15 were leaders and were farmers and were Sayyidina Usama bin Zayd at the age of 17, he was leading an army. Abu Bakr and Umar was part of the army. Muhammad al-Fatih, how old was he when he became a Khalifa? 14, right? He conquered Constantinople, was 25 or 24 years old. So the way you talk to them, the way you treat, I know it's not only about the parents. This issue is a package. It's society, school, everybody is treating this group as if, oh, they are in very, fragile. Just don't mess up with them. Let them do whatever they want. This is how they behave. The kids, I went through this not too long ago, right? I was in that age not too long ago. We take advantage of you, parents. We are very smart. Seriously, the kids are very smart. If you think that we are fragile, don't mess up with, we take advantage of it and we behave as such. And I will behave as, no, don't talk to me, otherwise I will kill myself. Come on, right? So, inshallah ta'ala, what I would like to say is the way we talk to our kids is the way they behave. If you treat them adults, we promote that once you reach al-bulugh, now you are adults, you are man. Then they behave as such. If you treat them like, they behave like.
There's a couple more questions, and for the interest of time, I'll just... so one was asking, will boys' session include information on menstruation and for the younger kids? I thought we were, going to keep them separate, but probably mentioning that, females go through a different process because obviously as boys have sisters and stuff, and they understand once they hit blue why they're not praying, why they're not fasting. It's it's part of them to understand what the other gender is going through. There were a couple of brothers mentioned their approach is Jazakumullah khair, and maybe at some point Sheikh Yasin, one brother asked about the virtue of Surah An-Nur. Surah An-Nur has a lot of guidance about sexual health and to deal with that. And then one brother said the way he approaches, or one parent said the way they approaches this topic with their parents is, with their kids, is through reading hadiths or so that's specific to some of these topics, so it makes the subject easy. There is a couple of other questions that one parent asked about what to do if our kids say they are LGBTQ. What is the approach? So I think this is an important one, and I wanted us to spend some time on that, and I'll let Sheikh Yassin address. But I think the important part is, if you first recognize this is your child and they have a problem, and you're going to be a partner with them in solving this issue, right? Rather than chastising them and putting them aside, and really you're not going to reach a good approach, to try to understand and then seek. If you yourself don't have the knowledge or don't have the approach of, there is counseling, there's shuyukh here, there's a lot, and I think, but the worst thing is the minute your kid says, I'm this, you start, ignoring them or chastising them or yelling at them or not understand, because they're going through something and you want to have an open space for them, because if you don't, someone else will do and they'll run away from you. But I'll let Sheikh Yassin discuss a little bit more of the details.
I think that the approach that I would like to recommend in this issue is just to, first of all, understand that it is a test, and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you go through these tests. And number two is, most kids who might say that they are gay or lesbians, and I have seen these cases in the community, is actually they are going through something. You have to understand what is leading them to say something like this. Sometimes there is abuse at home. Sometimes the relationship between the father and the mother is not ideal. I know several cases where the girls, some say, I am lesbian, I am this, I'm that, but when we get to the bottom of it, they had very bad father, very abusive father, and just they hate to have any relationship with a man in the future, and then that's lead them to say, I am this or I am that. So sometimes you need to be smart and just put the issue of being lesbian or gay or this on the side, understand the challenges of your children. There must be a story behind why they came to this. And mashallah, I'm sitting in front of two doctors. I think it is smart not to treat the symptoms, to treat what? The problem, the root cause. So if most of the time, I'm saying, most of the time, kids saying I am this or I am that, this is a symptom of something much deeper than this. Try to go to the bottom of this issue and understand it. And in you going this is where we are going to develop that loving relationship. And sometimes you discover that you are the issue. Sometimes you discover that you are the issue, because you are not good to your children because you are that, and sometimes they are other reasons. Number three is, you have to teach them in a manner that you are not necessarily hateful by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You are not necessarily bad. You are not necessarily, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might test some people with certain feelings and to test your iman and faith. Even after you exhaust all your effort to understand the issue, the root cause of the issue, and teach them that you might have, even if you have this feeling, struggle with it and help your son to go through it and get a therapy, Muslim therapy, good therapy. Because if you don't go to good therapy, this is the mistake itself. They are going to normalize the feeling, right? Normalize that feeling. So make sure that you go to a therapy that help them walk through these issues, inshallah ta'ala. And at the end of the day, walk them through the guidance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And use techniques that this is a challenge, this is imtihan from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests people in different ways, and that could be your test, and inshallah will deal with it. As long as you don't act upon it, Allah will not hold you accountable for your feelings. As long as you don't act upon these feelings.
Just to add one other comment to that, what Sheikh Yassin says, statistics about, there may be an underlying cause, right, for these behavior. And one thing that we don't, I guess we're not aware of in a lot of communities is sexual abuse that occurs in kids. actually more than, I think some statistics go up to more than 80% of sexual abuse occurs that kids are abused are by people they know, from relatives. So I think it is, when your child comes to you with a problem about this is when your antenna should come up, to have a conversation with them. Is someone that they know is abusing them? Are they, especially if they're young? But it's a major issue. It's an issue not only for us. If you look at sexual abuse issues that occur in society in general are not from strangers, right? We teach our kids about strangers, but you also, and at some point we'll talk about maharim. And there was another question, and maybe this will be our last question, and maybe Sister Wafia can address this. It says, as parents, what questions should you avoid discussion? Could you provide an example? Is there a limit to open discussion with your children?
I do not think there's any limitation to any questions. They should be able to ask anything freely, openly. I don't understand why would someone say, why would a child be limited? They're absorbing the information one way or the other. If you do not feel comfortable answering something that should be answered, they'll be finding one or the other ways. The problem is the other way may not be a good or right way, may not be able to get good information. So if you feel that it's not a right question or there's a limit, that means it's not in your comfort level to answer that question. But it's not because a child should not be asking, it's just not being comfortable with that.
I think the other aspect, if I understood the question properly, is where is the lines of al-haya, right? So where we draw the line of al-haya. I think if you feel that your children are asking questions and probably you are thinking it's being a little vulgar or crossing the line of haya, the way you answer the questions will put things into perspective. You teach your child how to ask the question, not to tell him, no, not to ask me this way. This is aib. Ask me, this is the way to ask. No, don't tell him this. The way to answer the question, the terms that you use, the language that you use, the approach that you use, will teach your children how to ask these type of questions in the future. But don't shut him down or don't shut her down because they don't ask anymore. But the way you approach it, for example, if you use a term that is very vulgar, right? Don't use it in answering the question. Use something that is more clean, more respectful, but it conveys the same message, right? But don't shut them out because if you do it once, twice, 3 times, as Brother Saddam and Sister Wafia said, they will never come back to you and they learn it somewhere else. So there is no limitations. However, you have to teach them al-haya in your actions. Don't lecture them. Just the way you talk about it with them, with your wife at home, with the sheikh, in halaqa at home, in discussion, the way you approach these things, that will put the haya boundaries for them, right? But if you don't talk about it at all, how do they learn how to ask the question, right? How do they learn what are the guidelines? How do they learn where to stop? They don't learn. So this is why the way you approach it is the best way to teach them where to draw the line. Again, inshallah ta'ala, if you'd like, in 2 weeks we can plan a follow-up event where we can go more of structured presentation in what are the fiqh aspects, what we need to do. If necessary, we can separate sisters from the brothers so we can be more comfortable. We can have a presentation for the sisters with somebody and with the brothers, with me inshallah ta'ala, so we can cover openly these topics and how to approach it with our children inshallah ta'ala. But to let you know, we are discussing it with the youth Saturday and Sunday inshallah ta'ala. And of course, we know that some parents might be concerned, but inshallah ta'ala we are treating your children like we treat our children, and we know inshallah ta'ala that we are providing them what is healthy and good for them inshallah ta'ala. Jazakumullah khair.
People can get so much information. I said the biggest problem comes from people looking up the internet and getting information there. How do you guide those kids as far as, how to get the information? Because I think if we can convince them that there are better alternatives or better ways to get information, you know, in terms of still going outside the family, because they will do that regardless, you know, whatever you tell them. So how do you guide those that? Because if we can use that properly, it would be a big help.
Wallahi, to be honest, this is another extreme thing I would like to say today. I said about the public school, this is the second thing I would like to say it, and you might think I think it is a big mistake to have a device with your son. Limiting their usage of devices and technology is a prevention of no matter how good and decent of tarbiyah they have, it is curiosity of a human being. Just, you are throwing them into the ocean and tell them don't get wet. It's illogic what you are trying to achieve. Giving your son or your daughter a device is a big mistake. I tell to some parents who send their kids to our programs, 12, 13, 14 years old, and they have the last iPhone. What is the last one? 14 plus, or Pro, or things like this. Tell me why you are sending this device with your son. Oh no, I need to communicate with them, to pick them up from school. Do they need iPhone 14 to pick them up? Come on. No, they are crying, everybody in the family, like I promised them. Okay, then deal with it. Don't give, if you need to pick them up, to call them, give them, what we call it in Jazair, hatba. What do you call it here? Flip phone. It's like basic phone. They don't need internet. They don't need, tell me, oh, they have homework. No, they have homework. There is laptop at home in the living room. They can work there as much as they want and then go to sleep. Having a device in the bedroom, having a laptop in the bedroom, an iPad, an iPhone, I'm telling you right now, you are harming deeply, profoundly your children. And take responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So less of the time in technology. Resist. Don't feel that everybody, now we are here, how many of us? 60, 50, 40. If everybody of us will commit that we don't give our children devices, this is a strength by itself. I'm not alone. But if all of us feel, no, because everybody else is doing it, now I feel the same way, you feel the same way, you feel the same, and everybody will give up. Resist, don't give up devices. And the fact that the school work all now is online and you have to submit the homework, that's not an excuse for you to give up. Put a laptop in the living room, and if they have more children, put two laptops in the bedroom, in the living room. Okay, if you have work, please go work as much as you want. When you finish, go to sleep. So this is the basic. No device whatsoever. I wouldn't give my son. Okay, let me not say it, because people are holding me for so many things. Do your best. Do your best. Do your best, and I'll ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help. Yes, Jad, we have to go, but go ahead. Yeah. Yeah, but Brother Khalid was mentioning even they go somewhere else, the family, friends, and they use phones. But do your best to limit the evil. Do your best. And then you can treat other things to the best of your ability. With education, with fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with the taqwa. We are going to talk about pornography tomorrow and after tomorrow. How it's damaging their faith, their health, their physical health. How it will damage their future marriage relationship. You know, our marriage is collapsing. Why? So many people are addicted to pornography. Let's be honest, right? It's collapsing. It's in the Muslim community. So many marriages broken. Why? People are addicted to this. We need to teach these statistics to children who are 14, 15, 16. So the marriage, your marriage, you'd like to be successful husband. If you start this right now, you will not be successful husband, right? So we need to share them some data, scientific data, how this is going to affect. Plus, it boils down to the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Jazakumullah khairan for coming today. We really appreciate that you're staying till that late, but it's important. Inshallah, if you received the message about this event through the announcement messages. Inshallah, we will send some resources that will be helpful for you as a parent on how to start the conversation, how to like sustain a communication, a conversation. At the end, it's about us in our minds, like what is the thought in our mind, and this is how we deliver the message to the kids, to our children. جزاكم الله خيرا. If إن شاء الله إن شاء الله جزاكم الله خيرا. السلام عليكم. جزاكم الله خير. جزاك الله خير. ساعة ونص 12 ونص إن شاء الله. Anything for tomorrow? Anything needed for tomorrow?
Are you going to be holding the event outside or it's going to be in the rooms?
In the rooms, inshallah.
Can
So
we
one
can
room.
we get in the chairs?
Assalamu alaikum. If some of the men still here, can you help out in clearing out the chairs? Jazakumullah khairan. Just leave the two tables back there. They will still there. Just the chairs of the front.
العمر 9 ل 13 من 10 ل 13 بس في 10 ما في مثلا انا ابني هو 11 الشهر هذا الشهر بس هو في الليفل 5 سو مش مشكله اي حد 10
ربنا يبارك لك كريم. لا والله. الحمد لله. جزاك الله خير.
شو مالك زعلان؟
Everyone is hearing you.
Oh no.